Let's paint some of these painterly style trees, and I'm going to be using paper bags as my background. This one's super easy and fun, and I'm going to share with you all of the steps. For the supplies, you'll need some bags if that's what you want to paint on, some paintbrushes, and some variety of sizes. Yes, I have peanut butter on my sleeve. Let's try to ignore that. And then the other thing you're going to need is some acrylic paint. I'm just using inexpensive craft store paint, as well as a palette. If you don't have a palette, no worries. Grab yourself a magazine sheet or a sheet of newspaper, works just fine. So the first step is we're just going to grab as many paper bags as we have because I have lots. I've been saving all year for this kind of activity. Squirt some paint on those. I'm using, like I said, acrylic paint, and then just spread that paint all around. The edge of that you're creating, I like to make the edge a little bit more brush-like and organic looking. You could kind of go with the shape of the bag. To me, this looks like a Pop-Tart. Doesn't this look like the icing on a Pop-Tart? You could go with the shape of the bag. You could paint a round motif, a square, a rectangle, or go all the way to the edge. The choice is yours. Now, I do have some bags like this bag from Whole Foods that has a giant motif. Of course, they put it all the way to the edge. So I really had to get a lot of paint on there and then go all the way to the edge with it. I think this is the one where I accidentally put way too much paint on the bag. So to kind of grab some of that paint off of there, I stacked another bag on top, gave a little massage, and then pulled a print. This removed some of the excess paint from the bag, and it also made it where I had paint on another bag to go ahead and get started. So go to town, get the kids involved, have everybody just start covering these bags with paint. And even if you don't use them all, you'll at least have them in the future when you're ready to decorate. All right, so now that this has dried, I've got a nice skinny brush, and I'm just using my acrylic paint and making the trunk of the tree. Make sure this isn't a straight line. Get kind of organic, make it kind of curved, and then using brush strokes and a light green color, I'm just kind of flicking away from that center part, making my flicked lines get a little bit longer and bigger the further I go down the trunk. You cannot mess this up. Just keep going. Don't sweat it. Just keep on making tiny flicked lines at the top that gradually get longer as they go toward the bottom. And you can mix up the colors a little bit. I've got that variety of greens that I'm using. I'm using a variety of brush strokes because if you think about it, a Christmas tree or an evergreen tree isn't going to be perfect, isn't going to be the same. It's going to have a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different shapes on it. So that's what you should go for. Right here, I was just trying to add a little bit more color throughout the tree so that it blends a little bit. If it helps, you could draw a triangle shape with your piece of chalk, starting at the very top of the tree, and then make a triangle shape that kind of goes down. It should be kind of a wonky triangle shape. Imagine like a Grinch tree where things are kind of wonky and different looking, because that'll make your tree much more interesting looking. That might help you have an idea of the space that you're working within when you're trying to fill in your tree. So if it helps to draw, you can actually look at my tree and see it's in a triangle kind of shape. If it helps to draw that first, I say go for it because the chalk line will disappear, or when the painting is dry, you can just kind of wipe it off. All right, so my thing here is you shouldn't be able to see the trunk through the tree. You can still see my vertical line going through the tree. So I'm going to work to try to get rid of that. And I'm slowly trying to bring out the bottom of the tree because it should be the widest. So now I'm going back, just kind of filling and flicking that in, keeping the top of the tree kind of narrow, getting rid of that center line so that it all looks like a tree and you don't see the trunk through the tree. And then I'm going to let that dry. For a little bit of variety, you could throw some blue into the mix, like a good turquoise blue would be pretty, or even add some yellow. You might even want to clean your brush in between. If you mix it too much, all the colors will get mixed, and you're going for a variety of colors in the tree so that you can see those different colors. Here I'm adding a little bit of turquoise, totally not doing what I just told you to do, definitely not cleaning off my paintbrush, but it's working a little bit because I'm not mixing the brush around and blending the colors too much. Once you have this tree to a place where you're pretty happy with it, Then you can set it aside and start on your next tree. When I do projects like this, I like to have a couple of them going at once, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 trees, because that way I kind of loosen up a little bit. My first tree is always a little bit stiff because I'm a little bit anxious and worried about getting it just right. But the more that I paint, I feel like the more confident I get and the better I get. So let's go a little bit faster. I started with the trunk again, started with narrow little lines at the top, and then making them bigger as I'm going further down. All right, this one's all dry. Let's go ahead and decorate our tree. I mean, technically, you could leave it like this and add some snow in the background, but once it's dry, I'm going to use a kind of a reddish orange color and some tiny lines and some big blobby lines to make these orbs for my tree. When you're painting these, the reason I'm saying tiny and big is because variety is what's going to make your artwork interesting. Making them be all the same wouldn't be as interesting to look at. Plus, this helps you show space. This allows you to show that some of the bulbs or the lights are a little bit further back, some of them are closer to you. So variety is a great thing to add, which is why I also switched up the colors. This, I felt like when I was finished, it needed something more, so I set it aside to dry before I got some inspiration by looking online at some trees, and then I figured out exactly what it needed. It needed some garland, so I'm going to start with a star at the top, and I'm using a really small brush and some very light yellow paint because I kind of wanted it to look like it was glowing. Now I'm going to add some strands of lights. And when I do this, I'm not really going to make a solid line. I'm kind of tapping my brush to make a dotted line. The reason for the dotted line is that I wanted the garland, or if these are Christmas lights, the Christmas lights to look like they were twinkling or sparkling. So that's why I'm kind of using a dotted or a dashed line, and I'm not using a straight zigzag across the tree. I'm kind of using a curved zigzag. Again, if you're not really sure about what kind of line to make, draw it with the chalk first, so that gives you a guideline or a little bit of an area to follow. You could even take a look at your own tree if you happen to have one up. I sadly did not put up a tree this year. That's terrible, but at least I painted some. So if you have one in your home, you could look at, you could kind of get an idea of how things are twinkling or decorated on your tree. That might give you some inspiration. Now, I did use some yellow and then some white. And I saved the white for last because I really wanted the white to be the parts that popped. And if you overuse a color like white, then it's not going to really stand out. But if you use it sparingly, maybe in some teeny tiny dots, then it'll make it look a little bit more like it's twinkling. Now, just like I painted those wreaths, if you want to paint a Christmas wreath, I have a video for that. I did use my extra paint for splattering, and I just think it makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. And in this case, it kind of acts as colorful snow. Never leave that paint just sitting on your palette. When you're finished painting, there's all sorts of things you can do with that extra paint. Use that extra paint to add splatters. Use that extra paint to paint backgrounds on more bags. But never just leave it sitting there. It'll just go to waste. It'll become dry and hard. You can't add water to acrylic paint to revitalize it. It's not like that. So you have to use it while it's out. So that's what I would recommend to do. Now, when I was kind of finished with the tree and done adding more bulbs, I just felt like my tree needed to be a little bit more full. If you look at it, you can see that my lights go beyond the tree. So I decided to go back in with some green. And if you notice how I'm holding my brush when I want to make sure that I don't focus too much on details but give things a more organic look, I hold my brush at the very, very end, and this allows much more freedom. I can't control the brush as easily, so the brush kind of takes on a life of its own, and I'm also now going to go back and splatter paint. So those are some things you might want to think about. If your hand is getting tired or you feel like your painting is just looking a little bit stiff, try overloading your brush with maybe some watery paint. Hold it at the very end and just get kind of loose with it. You'll enjoy the painting process much more. And when you enjoy the painting process more, it shows up in your painting. It's pretty magical. Suddenly your painting looks like it's having fun as well because you enjoyed painting it. All right, now that I've got my extra paint filled in with splatters, which to me makes for that colorful snow, let's do a quick review on how to add all of those ornaments and the string of lights. So just going to make kind of a curved zigzag down your tree, add some orbs for some ornaments. Next up, you're going to fill in with more color, maybe some of that green and blue for the tree. Maybe now go back with some white dots. Do you see how that makes it kind of sparkle and twinkle? Don't forget your star at the top if that's what you want to do. Next up, let's add some splatters. I really like the contrast of the blue splatters, so I went ahead and used it to outline my tree. Now that your trees are complete, not only do they make really cute bags for gifts, but then you can let the recipient know, hey, you can also frame this. So you got a bag and a work of art and all the treasures that you're going to put inside. I think I need a bigger frame for this one, but I still love that it looks so cute framed. I hope you guys had fun, and I cannot wait to see what you create. Toodles!